He's a man of many talents and quite a few words. Not only did he invent the talk show as we know it, he wrote songs, he wrote books, Ordinary Life of Steve Allen.
It's from Hollywood, and it's the Steve Allen Show.
Steve Allen, the original wild and crazy guy. A joker, a composer, an innovator, he's a man who does all those things for a living and loves them all.
Right now. What is your name now?
My name is Gordon Hathaway, and I'm from Manhattan, and I'm just too much. Hi-ho, Steve Reno.
Yeah.
New York City, 1921. The day after Christmas, Stephen Valentine Patrick William Allen was born to the vaudeville team of Billy Allen and Belle Montrose. Billy was the straight man, Belle the funny one.
She came from a witty family, the Donahues, and they did influence my own comedy style, my way of communicating generally. Milton Berle was once kind enough to refer to my mother as the funniest woman in vaudeville, and I believe she was. She played an amateur, and it was perfect casting because she looked very unprofessional.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the stage people...
No, one of the actors. Yeah.
One of them didn't come for... Now, ain't here for here yet. Didn't make it. And the manager didn't want you to disappoint me.
No. Disappoint you.
The manager didn't want you to disappoint you. So he's going to do it.
No.
Steve was only 18 months old when his father died. His mother started working on her own and left Steve with her family in Chicago, where he became... But Steve's childhood also had its dark side. The old maid aunts and bachelor he lived with had no idea of how to raise a child. Pawned off from one relative to another, Steve lived with at least 25 different people and attended nearly just as many schools. He began educating himself. He spent hours visiting museums or reading at the library. But some of the most important lessons he learned came from Hollywood.
I think I learned to be a gentleman from watching motion pictures, except for the priests and very few others. I never met any gentlemen in my neighborhood. It was, lower middle class, tough stuff. Nevertheless, when I went to the movies, I saw William Powell. I saw Clark Gable, Warner Baxter. And I approved of the way they conducted themselves. I approved of their gentlemanly manners. And that is literally how I put together my concept of what a gentleman is.
The movies also gave Steve an idea of what he wanted to do when he grew up.
I wanted to be a newspaper man. That was partly because I could write and partly because I'd seen various movie actors playing newspaper men with their fedora on the back of their head and trench coats, hanging out with beautiful women and going to Paris and things like that. I thought that would be better than any jobs one might mention.
Winning a journalism scholarship, Steve entered Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. It was the happiest year of his life. He worked on the school paper, acted in campus shows, and played in the school dance band. Even then, he was a pretty good piano player. Drake University was one of the first colleges in the country to have a course in broadcasting, and Steve took advantage of the opportunity.
Believe it or not, I took the radio course because it seemed like the easiest thing on the list. I already had a mouth which worked well, and I thought that it might be fun to do a little radio too, along with my writing, which is oddly enough the way it eventually turned out.
When Steve's scholarship ended, he had to go home. Home now being Phoenix, Arizona. But within a few months, he landed a job as a staff announcer at a local radio station. Before long, Steve was doing more than just announcing. He was writing, directing, producing, and giving the Phoenix listening audience a taste of things to come. Arizona gave Steve more than a career. He also met a young woman named Dorothy Goodman.
We had known each other at college, and then during the several months I was in infantry basic training, we got married. At that time, I had no idea that I was going to be given a medical discharge. We were being trained, in fact, for likely duty in North Africa. So both Dorothy and I thought either I might never see her again or I would be gone for 2 or 3 or 4 years. So on that assumption, we got married.
Instead of going to North Africa, Steve headed for Hollywood with Dorothy and their infant son, Steve Jr. It was the heyday of network radio, and Steve wanted to break into the big time. Steve got a call from Wendell Noble, a fellow announcer from Phoenix who had also moved to L.A. Together, Wendell and Steve wrote and starred in a 15-minute daily comedy show called Smile Time. Within 6 months, it was being broadcast from coast to coast.
It's Smile Time! It's Smile Time. Leave your blues away because it's Smile Time. Brighten up the
After
day.
2 years on the air, Smile Time was suddenly canceled.
I got work at the CBS station here in town to play records, which I thought, oh boy, what a come down here. I've just been on coast-to-coast comedy for 2 weeks, and now for 2 years, and now I'm playing records at a local station. What a drag.
But Steve's creativity took over. He began talking more and more and playing fewer records.
Hello, everybody. This is Steve Allen, the Square from Columbia, speaking to you from Columbia Square in Hollywood once again, and inviting you to stick around and have as much fun as this gentleman is right here in the front row. We're going to play at least one record tonight, and we have several features.
To my great surprise, the audience loved it, and they began to write in saying, can we come in and watch you? Within a few months, we were in a studio that accommodated 350 people, and later were moved to a studio that accommodated 1,000. And it became, in fact, what some people have told me is still the most popular late-night radio show in Los Angeles.
One night, when guest star Doris Day failed to show up, Steve was suddenly faced with having to fill 30 minutes of airtime. The usually unflappable Steve was in a panic.
I read the few jokes I'd written, and to this day I can't think of what else I might have done, at least that anybody would have wanted to listen to. So I lugged the big old heavy cheese box mic, as they used to call it, on the big stand, the kind you see in old pictures of Jack Benny shows or Burns and Allen shows, and carried it through the audience. And immediately one thing became apparent. The laughs doing that were much bigger, louder, and longer, and more from the soul of the audience than the laughter at the prepared and rehearsed material.
Steve's ad-libbing with the audience quickly became one of his trademarks. By now, he was a full-fledged hit on radio. But by 1949, big-time network radio was on its last legs. The television age had begun. So CBS insisted that Steve leave Los Angeles to do his show from the center of network television, New York City. It was a good career move for Steve, but difficult for him personally. After 9 years, his marriage to Dorothy was collapsing. They had nothing in common except for 3 sons whom Steve loved dearly. He left for New York filled with guilt and sadness. The only trouble was CBS didn't know what to do with Steve. They couldn't find the right time slot for his show.
It had a difficult time catching on in the ratings, and in fact, people from that era at CBS now say it was a terrible mistake to even put it in the daytime. It was just the wrong audience for him, and so it was not a successful show.
Kosk was then running NBC's television station in New York, called me and said, in effect, he wanted me to do a late-night show for him. He knew that I had done a late-night radio show, which is where all my real good luck started, in L.A. And so I said, okay.
Famous Knickerbocker Beer welcomes you to The Steve Allen Show.
After about 14 months of that, then Pat Weaver, who was running NBC's programming department at the time, had come up with a title, just one word, Tonight. He already had a big hit with his Today Show in the morning, and understandably, he inevitably would have wanted a show called Tonight.
From New York City, the National Broadcasting Company presents Tonight, starring Steve Allen.
And so, before Jay Leno, Johnny Carson, or Jack Parr, Steve Allen became the very first host of The Tonight Show on September 27th, 1954.
Now to meet the star of our show, Steve Allen.
Anyway, in case you're just joining us, this is Tonight. And I can't think of too much to tell you about it, except I want to give you the bad news first. This program is going to go on forever. Boy, you think you're tired now. Wait till you see 1 o'clock roll around. This is a New York theater called the Hudson, and we especially selected this for this very late show because this theater's, I think it sleeps about 800 people.
We would ad lib.
Here we come down the steps of the world-famous jazz spot, Birdland. This is just for you to walk if you ever get to New York and drop in, and you'll stop here and pay. Hello
The
there.
original Tonight Show was as versatile as Steve himself. One night might be devoted to hearing the Count Basie Band at Birdland.
Hey, Steve.
How you doing? Things are jumping here tonight, huh?
Well, I'll see.
Well, that's good. Well, I don't want to slow it down any. What do you say we get right into the record for which there have probably been more requests thrown at you this year than any in a long time? A thing called April in Paris. You all set?
Roll.
Another to a discussion about organized crime. But mostly, there was comedy. Another favorite feature of the show was Steve's reading of letters to the editor. From time to time, guests like Jerry Lewis would sit in.
It says here... You're angry already there. All right, first one's from Manhattan. It says, I would like to know where Zach Mosley, who writes Smilin' Jack, gets the idea that people can talk while kissing.
With Steve at the helm, the original Tonight Show featured just as much music as comedy. Every night was like a jam session. By the end of 1954, 3 million viewers a night were staying up with Steve. Off camera, things were also going great for him. Not long after his divorce from Dorothy, he attended a dinner party where he met an actress named Jane Meadows.
2 years later, almost to the day, we were married.
Professionally and personally, Steve was on a roll. Besides hosting The Tonight Show, he was branching out, making records, writing books, composing hit songs like Picnic, The Gravy Waltz, and what would become his theme song, This Could Be the Start of Something Big. He was also becoming a movie star. In the summer of 1955, he beat out Tony Curtis for the starring role in The Benny Goodman Story. The part of the shy, introverted band leader was a natural for Steve. Steve was one of the busiest performers in show business, and he was about to get even busier. That spring, NBC would offer Steve the most challenging assignment in all of television, going head-to-head against Ed Sullivan's really big show. It was more grueling than ever. In addition to the new Sunday night show, he continued hosting The Tonight Show. It was too much, even for Steve.
I finally had to go to the network guys and say, I'm sorry to bring you bad news, but I cannot go on doing both these shows.
The Steve Allen Show quickly became known as the showcase on TV for new comedy talent.
So, ladies and gentlemen, here is a very shocking comedian, the most shocking comedian of our time, a young man who is skyrocketing to fame, Lenny Bruce. Hey, Lenny, where's your old lady?
Oh, we had a beef, man. We broke up.
Oh, it's too bad. Don't worry, you'll get back together.
No, that's it, you know. You have a million fights, and finally you decide that's the one. You've had it, you know, and I finally got the guts, and I got rid of her. I don't believe it, man, but I finally did it. I finally got rid of her.
How'd you do that?
She left me.
He was a genius.
Besides great guests every week, Steve put together a cast of regulars that is still considered one of the funniest in television comedy history.
We'll find out now as we meet our first man in the street. Your name, sir? Sir, I can't understand how a man can forget his own name.
It isn't easy.
Here's our next man in the street. Your name, sir?
My name is L.L. Morrison, and I'm a television director.
What is your name, sir, and what course do you teach?
My name, Jose Jimenez. I to Santa Claus. I teach to Santa Claus. I to Santa Claus. I teach Santa Claus to speak.
Well, first I teach Santa Claus to laugh.
You teach him to laugh?
Yes, I teach him to say, ho, ho, ho.
You know, dear, for years I've been saying to the millions of television viewers, thanks for letting me come into your living rooms. Well, tonight, for a change, I'd like to welcome the folks into our home. Right now.
After 6 years in prime time, Steve gave up the weekly grind in 1961. Being back in L.A. also gave Steve more time with his sons from his first marriage. But within a year, Steve would return to television in the time slot that made him famous. And for Steve, the second time around in late night was even wilder than the first. Steve Allen, the father of late-night TV, was back that year with the wildest series he ever did, or for that matter, anyone ever did.
Hey, this is dumb.
You're on your own.
Steve couldn't have known it at the time, but his shtick was influencing an entire generation of future comedians. Some of the show's biggest fans were the young Steve Martin, Robin Williams, Billy Crystal, and a 16-year-old kid in Indianapolis named David Letterman. By the early 1970s, Steve Allen had been appearing on television for over 20 years, but he was still an innovator. And as the 70s began, he was about to give TV one of the most unusual shows in its history.
Welcome to Meeting of Minds. And now your host, Mr. Steve Allen.
Although Steve Allen's own mind works quickly, it took him 18 years to get Meeting of Minds on the air.
Wouldn't it be fascinating to discuss theology with Thomas Aquinas, revolution with Thomas Paine, or the problems of 20th century America with Theodore Roosevelt? Well, by what magic I have no intention of revealing, we can.
In 1980, Steve returned to NBC with 6 specials that brought together members of his old Sunday night gang with new comics like Billy Crystal and Steve Martin.
Who the hell are you?
As Steve later, Steve was recognized for his many contributions to broadcasting with his induction into the Television Academy Hall of Fame show. As an author, he's up to book number 44. He holds the Guinness record as the most prolific songwriter of modern times. The grand total is now over 4,000 songs.
Indian sports calendar. Your old stupid jerk Bill Allen bringing you, how are you? The complete sports roundup in the world of sports for all you jerky sports out there in Sportsland. Well, what's new in sports? I'll tell you what's new. The 1958... Good night, folks. Serious. That's it. Now. Seriously. All right, here we go. Now. This good.
I'm having a lot of fun hosting the Tonight Show the last couple of years, but it wouldn't even be a Tonight Show if it wasn't for this guy who was the first host back in 1907. I remember Marconi had... Back in the 1950s. But you know, my favorite...
I got a simple question. Do you vote for presidency in this country, sir?
I do.
Good. If a person running for president was an acknowledged heterosexual, would that matter to you?
It would.
Well, how, you would not vote for him or her?
I wouldn't vote for him or her.
Just because they're a heterosexual?
Yeah.
Simple question. If a person, seriously now, running for the presidency of the United States revealed that he was an admitted heterosexual, in all honesty, could you vote for him or her?
No.
Great. I think my favorite remembrance of Steve was after one night, he had finished taping the show, and there was this old gentleman who had fallen asleep in the studio. And Steve couldn't leave it alone. It's one of the great moments in television. Watch.
Gentleman who was seated back in this part of the house. I hope he's asleep. Hello there. Hello? Sir? This is the Arizona Border Patrol. You carrying any nuts or fruits in there, sir? Hey, Mac, knock it off. Come on. No, I'm just kidding. Don't want to wake them up too fast. They must have put on a hell of a show, I got to tell you that. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Mahatma Gandhi. Sorry, I'm showing great disrespect to an Indian holy man. Hey, man. I think we're... Sir? Hello? Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Hello, sir? Dare I lay a finger on him? Bring me somebody's finger, would you please? I'll try this one, it's handy. Sir? Ah.
One.
How are you? Who are you?
Huh?
Who are you?
I'm from Glendale.
Okay, well, that tells us who you are. Now, where do you live?
Las Pimas and Glendale.
Yeah, how long have you been here?
Where?